good morning, evening, or afternoon, whichever one's going on for you at this current point in time. You see the yellow flag? That's right, we're talking about DeWalt today, and specifically a little bit after 2 months of me using the utility knife, their recently, few months ago, released utility knives. For those of you who want the actual model number, it's the DWHT10992, and about a week after that, I picked up the 991 as well. So I will be talking about both of them, and just to respect your time, I'm going to go through the pros, go through the pros, go through the cons, and I noticed that my videos were taking a turn more towards the tool and less towards the technical, so I'm going to try to make it a little more linear, got some notes here, make it a little more technical, and I will send you on your way. Sound good? Watch the whole video. So the way I'm going to structure this video is give it some pros, give it some cons, and the way I like to structure things is if there's more pros than cons, I'm going to recommend you go buy it. If there's more cons than pro, I'm going to say you don't need to run out and get it. And if it's neutral, again, like any other choice, it's up to you to decide. That's your interpretation based off of any data that I supply you. With that being said, the 992 is my, more favorite of the two, so I'm going to go with that one. You see? First pro right there, zoom in action. We have grips and textures all over, right? Back of the head, back of the neck, sides of the head, right? Both sides. This thing, super grippy, and I like that. You got a real firm grip for it. I will say the Fastback from Milwaukee is smoother, so if you like more grippy type of texture, I definitely got to go with the DeWalt. Part of that grippiness is, like I said in the original video, which is, as a left-handed person, I like that the clip is out of the way. I gotta move out because the camera's trying to focus on my face more. Right there. The bottom position means for lefties, nice, out of the way. You're not pressing your thumb on a belt clip. You're using your index finger for the actual flipping motion. As a lefty, again, I gotta respect it. That goes for the 992 and the 991. They are both the same, and they are both awesome in that regard. So plus 1 point for texture. Now, I will say, because texture technically falls under ergonomics, I also have to point out once more, as I did in the original video, that the bottom clip, as a lefty, it's out of the way of my fingers. My fingers are on this side, so the clip is out of the way. Right? It's not really bothering my palm because of that sloped little shape. I like that. It's very nice. Now, with that being said, 5% of the population, of the world population, 8 billion, 10% of that is 800 million divided by 2. That's your 5%, 400 million people. 400 million, and let's assume half of that population was children, mentally ill people, people in a coma, amputees, any demographic of individuals who just don't have a need for this product. Let's assume half of that population was unavailable for whatever reason. Maybe they were stuck in a time capsule, and you still have potentially 100 million people that may be in the market as a left-handed person for such a product. And I think that that's absolutely ridiculously awesome. Now, I can't really show you any scrapes and bumps and bruises on the 991 because I've been using the 992, but this thing I will take with me everywhere. If I'm going to the groceries, if I'm going to the gas station, if I'm going wherever, you're going to see some scuffing, a little bit of scratches here and there. It is what it is. I've taken this, I've dropped it, and again, I want to make sure that my tools are getting thrown around for the main reason. They're tools. They're made to be beat up. Again, respect your tools, clean your tools, maintain your tools. But if something falls and breaks on its first drop, probably not a good tool, right? So beating this thing up is not what is not my goal, but it certainly happens, and it's held up pretty well. And because it has held up with absolutely no issues in performance, we're going to give another point for durability. Now, depending on where you live, the prices may be a little bit different, but for the most part, at least near me, the DeWalt is cheaper than the Fastback. Again, not by much. We're talking about maybe $2, but I managed to pick up the 992 for about 15 bucks, and on clearance for like $1.50 more or less, I was able to pick up the 991 for about 13 bucks. So if you're looking to pinch, $1, $2, the DeWalt might be for you if it's a price thing. Now, before we move into the cons, something that is a pro and a con, and I don't have my Milwaukee Fastback to show you, so I'm going to make this zoom in action, right? So as far as the blade retention, if you slide back on that lever, you get your blade out, put a new blade or flip this one around, put it back in, right? Not going anywhere. As far as the retention with the DeWalt, in and out, it has a lot more grip than the Fastback and the Fastback Compact. So if you're looking for which one holds the blade in better, I'd give that to the DeWalt over the Milwaukee. However, as far as lateral movement, I will say there is more play there in the DeWalt, so the Milwaukee takes it in lateral movement. If that little detail matters to you or blade retention matters to you, then it's a point in the favor of either one. But again, both very capable knives. So point for blade retention. Now, when I say cons, it might be a con that's an actual con, or it might just be something that I want to see in my version of an ideal knife for me. This was the utility blade that I've been using for before I came across these. And this thing is rubberized all through the belly, the back where your palm sits, the head, and the back of the head. So when you're using this thing, it's completely rubberized except for the yellow part where it says DeWalt. That's the only part that's plastic. Everything else is either rubber or metal. So very premium feeling tool, and again, never failed me, got the job done every single time. I wanted to see a little bit of, well, that's broken. I wanted to see what this would look like if there was a lot more, rubberization, especially somewhere near the head. I understand that if for whatever reason it was to go crooked, it would cause more friction when the flipping action happens. But a little bit of rubber on the outside, just some rubberization. Again, not giant bumpers, but just a little bit of rubberization would have absolutely made this thing a monster. Again, just for the sake of comfort, this thing is super smooth plastic, and again, it's not an emergency, but a little bit of rubber never hurts. So, con 1, no rubber. Now, I can always appreciate a well-built tool. However, I will say that this button right here, zoom in action, the most important part of this entire knife is the actuation button that when pressed removes activates the mechanism to release the head, right? But this button does need more force than the Fastback in order to, actuate that, that flip. If you're in for a harder mechanism so that your blade doesn't come free, again, this thing's not going to let your blade go, out. But with that mechanism, I do have to say that if you look, there is kind of some play in the head, and we'll talk about how that play comes in a little bit. So as far as the smoothness, I will give it to the Fastback. It is a bit smoother, but since we're talking about which one is smoother, I will say that the 992, which is this one, is about a quarter of an inch, 3/8 of an inch bigger than the 991. I like that one more because this one has more real estate. So you can see that I can keep my fingers kind of apart. Whereas this one, my fingers are a little more crowded. It really does matter as far as real estate. So if you have thicker fingers like myself, then you want all the real estate you can get. And that quarter inch, 3/8 of an inch really does matter. Not to say this one is bad, just to say this one for meatier hands, I would say go with the bigger one. But again, no problem here. If you have medium-sized hands and you're looking to save $1 or $2, the 991 is perfectly fine. So needing more pressure and not being as smooth as the Fastback, I will say is, it did break in a little bit. Like, it is smoother than what it was when I first bought it, but it's not as smooth and more pressure for that mechanism. Again, if that matters to you, then it's a con, but I don't know. Mine's is pretty okay. I'm still going to give it a con for it, though. So -1 for less smoothness. Also, if you're looking for which one is smoother, the 991 is smoother than the 992, and here's the reason. If I zoom in action, hey, how you doing? We're looking at the centered head. So the 991 is the knife, right? And it's centered. There is no onboard storage, so when the knife is put away, it falls directly centered. While the 992, since it does have the onboard storage, there is an offset. So you'll see this is where the blade storage is, right here where my finger's touching. Right next to it is where the knife goes in. So because of that offset, when you are flipping in a, you know, kind of straight line, if you were like kind of holding your arms out, then there's no issue between the two. However, when you're flipping at different angles, the 991, since it's straight, you know, it doesn't need as much resistance as the 992 does when you're, you know, flipping in, you know, other positions. Maybe you're down at the floor under a table or something. Maybe you're on your back under a sink or something. So just something to keep in mind. If you're looking for smoothness between the two, the 991 has it probably by 5 to 7% smoother. Again, nothing crazy, but certainly noticeable. So -1 for, again, like I said, smoothness. Now the third con, and this doesn't necessarily refer to the 991 and 992, these are separate knives, but the fact that DeWalt doesn't have a 6-in-1 version like the Milwaukee. Everybody loves that thing. Screwdriver, bottle cap opener, the knife, the stripper, you know, it has so many different functions. People love having it because it avoids the need to take an extra screwdriver or an extra this or that. I personally don't care. Most often than not, like, I don't need a wire stripper if I have this on me and I'm going to an electrical job. I'm not going to be using this. I'm going to be using my wire stripper, my self-adjusters, or my hand, you know, forged Knipex strippers. I'm not using this to get the work done. This is just like in an emergency that I happen to need it. But no, just still going to give it a con because it's not available. But that's not really on the fault of these knives, so it's going to be a ghost con. And the last thing, and of course I'm going to give you one more zoom in action, is right here. So if we look at the belt clips, you'll notice that on the 992, which is right here, you'll see that the belt clip is longer and it is slightly thicker than the one on the 991. That is not an accident. What you're looking at on the, and you can also tell by the shape, right? One has that kind of really deep slope. This one has the slope, while this one actually has like the divot. And that's because the one on the 992 is from the back of a Milwaukee. This is a Fastback type of wire belt clip. You'll see it's thicker, it's longer. The one on the DeWalt is thinner and shorter. The one from my DeWalt snapped off, and you might be thinking, were you skateboarding? Were you mountain climbing? What the heck were you doing that it broke? What I was doing was pulling the belt clip away just a few millimeters to see what the thickness would be for pockets. Now, if you happen to live in a place like myself where it's much colder than normal, it's getting to that point where you're wearing thick Carhartts, overalls, you're wearing thick pajama pants, you're wearing a jumpsuit. You're not wearing skinny jeans or leggings to clip this to, right? You're going to clip this to the side of your boot. You're going to clip this to your apron, to your tool belt, to your, you know, edge of your jacket, to your big hoodie sweater. Not everybody throws their knives in their pocket. Some people like to clip it somewhere. And so I wanted to see kind of what the limitation was, and it just snapped. So I will say, if you're looking for a solid belt clip, the DeWalt ain't it. I'm going to say that. This one hasn't broken because I haven't really used it, so it is what it is. But I went back to the store and I said, like, hey, the belt clip broke. Can I get another one? They said technically, because it falls under wear and tear and the knife itself was still functional, that there was nothing they could do about giving me a new one. Nor would I want one because it would just break anyways. So if you happen to have a Fastback but you like the DeWalt more, just take out the screw, steal the one from your Milwaukee, and put it right there. Quick side note, since we're talking about the belt clip, if you are going to put it at the top, make sure that you don't screw it in all the way, because you will end up, the screw actually does touch the head, and so it will greatly drag and be super stuck, and you'll wonder what's going on. You just need to back that screw out a couple of threads. So I like that there's, you know, versatility in how you can mount it or remove it if you don't like the clip, but as far as durability for the clip, that's a con. So for belt clip, you get -1 point. It's not a very good clip. And the final con is, with the 992, there is a gut hook cutout, right? And that's meant to cut some string, cut some wire, strip some wire, right? It's meant to be there. In my last video, which I'm going to put a little video of how I was struggling here. And is it long enough? I've grabbed a pretty short piece of rope here. Need a good grip on it. But I could not get the string to really cut. I had to like really squeeze on it, and eventually it popped. And the reason is, if you look right here, I'm able to, you see the blade right there? I'm able to pull because there's so much play in this head that it actually pulls the blade out of the way. So even string, even really thin twine, anything has the strength to push that blade out of place. And what that does, as you can see, the blade is now hidden, so there's nothing for it to touch and cut. I really wish that DeWalt would have made it so that when you actually close your knife, that head doesn't move. So the only way for it to really work is you have to grab the knife and really brace the head to get that blade to show, for you to make your cuts. And I think that really is unfortunate because, you know, it's a good knife. So if you're looking to strip wire with this specifically, or you're looking for that gut hook cutout to be a little more solid, then that is a minus for this one and a point for the Milwaukee. Apart from that, is it useless? No, just you gotta, you know, brace this. But when you're stripping wire, or cutting, you want to be focused more on pulling the material rather than pulling the knife, right? You know, you're not doing this so much as you're kind of manipulating the material so that when it cuts, it's not tearing the insulation, it's kind of cutting it and then like ripping it, right? It's more of a rip than a tear, if that makes sense. So you're not left with jagged edges on the insulation, because if anybody sees it, it looks like crap. So, you know, have a little pride in the work, even if it's something that's behind a wall or in an outlet box or receptacle where nobody's going to see it. You know, make nice, solid, clean little lines. If you're a plumber, you want to make sure stuff is reamed out nice and clean, no jagged edges, that kind of thing. Even if nobody's going to see it, just for you, you should know that it's good. And so, minus point for the gut cutout being loose, or a loose head leading to a less than useful gut cutout. 991 does not have that cutout, so if you need that, then the 991's out. And so just to give a summary of this story that I have just told you, it gets a 0.1 for texture / grip / ergonomics. It gets a 0.4 durability. It gets a 0.4 the left-handed position. That's absolutely critical to me. But again, the fact that you can move the clips and whatnot, I think that's awesome. So point for that. We're up to 3 points. Point for it being slightly cheaper than the Milwaukee. Of course, we can always appreciate a good price. So we have 4 points, and then the blade retention, technically, we're going to give that a point. So it will be 5 points for the pros. On the other side, we have our cons of no rubberized grip, which is -1. Fastback being smoother in terms of operation, -1. There's no all-in-one version, which for many people is kind of unfortunate. So that's -1. The broken belt clip and the Milwaukee's being stronger. Again, that might be a quality control issue, but I did go back to the store and check all of them, and all of the mechanisms, at least the ones near me, they were all kind of the same in terms of, like, you know, pressure or tension. So it is what it is. So that's -4. And then blade retention, the lateral movement, we're going to call that not necessarily a point, because it's not a bad thing, right? The DeWalt does hold it in more. However, we do have to talk about that loose head leading to that gut hook cutout issue, so that's going to be 5. So it's +5 for pros, +5 for cons, and so this is a neutral thing. It's a good knife, don't get me wrong. I've been walking around with it, go to the grocery store, gas station. I just keep it on me so that I can use it as much as possible and give you an honest review. But it's a solid knife. Does it have a few things that it's missing? Yes, or that it could do better? Absolutely. But would that stop me from buying another one if this one broke, or going for the warranty if, you know, if that was the case? No. Give me another one. This thing's great. However, I'm impartial. Nobody sent me this knife. Again, you can see I've got my DeWalt stuff. I've got my Milwaukee stuff. At the end of the day, are you going to buy yellow? Are you going to buy red? If you're looking for a lifetime warranty, leave them both on the shelf and grab the Husky. With that being said, thank you for watching, and work smart.